Welcome, everyone. This is Yvonne Davis and David Steele of the Rocky Mountain Compassionate Communication Network. And we are here today for Unleash Your Creativity, a blending of The Artist's Way by Julie Cameron and Nonviolent Communication by Marshall Rosenberg. So today we are starting week 6, which is recovering a sense of abundance. And I was
there's so much to talk about, though. How we get, golly, we could talk about, the implicate order and the interconnectedness of all beings. We could talk about, moving through limitations and just, a world where your needs are always met. Or we could talk about seeing the perfection in every moment. I don't know. We could talk about, there's actually enough time to get everything done that we need to get done because we don't have to be attached to outcome. We could talk about, relationship with money. I don't know. There's so many things we could talk about. What are we going to do?
Well, I know where I'm going to start, okay? And then we'll see where we go this week.
Okay.
Right. So,
abundance can be scary because there's so much.
That's true. Yes, in fact, that's a good segue into what I was going to talk about. Yeah.
I'm normal.
All right. So as I have said many times in these videos, so if you've been watching all the way up to this point, then you know what this is about. Okay. When we do the artist's way, most people do it because they are looking to clear away blocks to their creativity so they can just let the creativity flow. And that can relate to many different things. It can relate to any kind of art form, writing, painting, sculpting, dancing, whatever. It doesn't even matter. It can just be your whole life is an art form. So one of the things I've been saying is that the creative project that I have in mind as I'm working through these 84 days is to create a more abundant income and a thriving, successful business, because I have been self-employed for the past 9 years. As I said in the last video, I haven't had a full-time permanent job since I left CBS in February of 2009. So that was 9 years ago. And while I have never had any regrets, and I have done work that I have absolutely loved, and I'm so glad to be on this path. But I also admit that sometimes I have struggled financially, and I've always been able to meet my needs, but the issue is that, what Cameron talks about in chapter 6 is that sometimes it has felt limited. I haven't really felt myself all the time in the flow of abundance. So it's sort of like I'm willing to let myself have this level of comfort, which also creates some stress, because maybe some months I don't know how I'm going to pay my bills. Maybe occasionally I miss a bill and I get a late fee. And I'm always right there on that edge. So even though I meet my needs and I do enjoy my life and I do have lots of luxuries, not necessarily expensive jewelry and yachts and things like that, but the luxury of time to just enjoy living. And that is a luxury. That is wealth. So I'm grateful to have all that. So what I wanted to know is, why is it that I keep myself at that level? So I wanted to talk about this concept of a temperature. I was first introduced to this by Dennis Waitley. And what he talked about was that we each have an internal temperature. And if you have studied NLP at all, then you've probably run across this concept before. So the idea is that we each have an internal temperature. So let's say, as an example, you like to play golf. And let's say you're pretty good at it. So let's say your average is par. And then you have a really good game, and let's say you golf 3 under par. And then the next time you get on the golf course, it's like the balls are going all over the place. They're going into the ponds. They're going into the sand pits. They're going into the grassy fields off to the side. And it's like, what's going on here? Well, guess what? that brought you back to your average. And that's the idea of temperature. If you do a little better than usual, then the next time you do a little worse. And then it all averages out to the temperature where you feel comfortable. But the thing is, why are we limiting ourselves that way? I mean, why not shoot 3 under par every time? You know, why do we limit ourselves? So that takes me to another concept that I want to talk about, which is similar to what I've said about the dog collar and how we stay trapped within this certain range because there's an invisible fence. Well, there was this experiment done, and even though it's probably highly unethical, it was done, and I'm going to tell you about the results that came from that, because at least we can learn from that so that this poor animal that suffered would not have suffered in vain. So anyway, in this experiment, they put a dog into a cage that had a maze, and then they electrified the floor. So of course the dog ran, and he ran and tried to get out of the maze. And so they actually experimented with more than one dog because they wanted to make sure that, you know, this was actually repeatable. And that always occurred. You know, as soon as you electrified the floor, the dog runs and he tries to get out of the maze. So then the next thing they did was they put a harness on the dog. And then when they electrified the floor, of course he still tried to run, but he couldn't get away because he was tied to a harness. So they did it multiple times, and he continued to try to run, but he couldn't get away. They electrified the floor, he tried to get away. They electrified the floor, he tried to get away, but he could never get away because he was harnessed. Well, eventually he just stopped trying. And so when they electrified the floor, he would just stand there and take it because he couldn't get away. So the really interesting part of this experiment was that after a certain amount of time, when you took the harness off and then you electrified the floor, the dog still stood there and did not try to get away, even though he was no longer hindered. So they called this concept learned helplessness. And unfortunately, all of us, in some way, shape, or form, probably have some learned helplessness.
Yeah, there's nothing we can do about it, though.
But actually, there is. So that's what we're going to begin talking about. Now, here's the key. If you want to try to dissolve some of your blocks, to try to, you know, transform that lead into gold, the gold of empowerment, and integrate, and all of that wonderful stuff that we've been talking about, you have to find out where that invisible fence is and cross it. You have to find out where that invisible harness is so that you can remove it. Because even though it's not visible or tangible, it is still controlling your life. And until you can see it, you won't be able to be free of it.
But, you know, it keeps things simpler because then I just know what my role is. I don't have to do anything. I know what the pattern is. It's familiar. I know what to do next. So even if it's uncomfortable, I still kind of feel safe because I know the rules.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's one of the things is that even though you might dream of moving beyond that fence, moving beyond that barrier, and freeing yourself from that harness, you might dream about it. But there's also a part of you that wants to stay in the comfort zone because it's comfortable.
Well, and besides that, you know, what will your friends say? What will your spouse say?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You know, maybe they won't like you anymore if you change.
Right, right. And that's the other side of the coin.
Maybe it's unfair for you to change without them coming along. Mm-hmm. Maybe that puts you above them and you become uppity.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. Right. So
give up. Don't change. Too many reasons to stay the same. Surrender. Now, surrender. There's nothing you can do anyway.
Yeah. So.
Have you surrendered yet?
Yeah, we could just turn this video off and just give up now. But we made a commitment. We made a commitment. And this is something, too, that we've been talking about.
Perseverance.
I know. We've committed. We're persevering. We've got unbending intent. And so we're going to continue to move forward. So first thing, though, we have to do is we have to acknowledge the truth that there is a part of us that is still committed to staying in that comfort zone. There's still some way that we think we're benefiting, even though we're dreaming of moving beyond that barrier and freeing ourselves and seeing what's beyond the barrier. There's still a part of us that's committed to staying in that safe comfort zone and staying committed to whatever benefits we think we're getting from staying in that comfort zone. So what we're going to do next, unless if you want to add something, that's great, and I'll go ahead and set up what we're going to do next, and then if you want to add something, you can. So what we are intending to do here is to take a real life situation.
Does it involve a harness and electricity?
Oh my goodness. All righty.
Okay.
So, all right. So like David really took us out to someplace we did not want to go. Now we have to get ourselves back here. Okay.
I got you.
So
we're going to take a real life situation.
Yes, we're going to take a real life situation, and we are going to explore how does a real person who has real imaginary limitations, imaginary fences, imaginary harnesses, how does that person get in touch not only with those things that are holding her back from, you know, just going on and on and on and experiencing more and more of the abundance that this incredible friendly universe has to offer.
I just want to emphasize imaginary does not mean unreal.
Okay.
Everything that we create begins in our imagination.
Right.
In fact, imagination in some ways is more real than the physical laws of physics reality we live in. So I just want to, so it's not that, you know, the reason for that is if there's some sort of block, some sort of pattern that limits us, it's real. And it doesn't help to say it's not real, get over it. Or to say you just have a weak character, you need more willpower. Because these things in our lives are very potent, they're very real, and actually often unconsciously drive our actions and create the template that forms the reality we live in. And so they're very, very powerful, very, very real.
Right. All right. So guess who that real person is? She has some limitations. She's got an invisible fence. She's got an invisible harness that's keeping her at that level that I called her temperature.
I thought we weren't going to do anything with harnesses and electricity.
Right, but not in the way that you were probably thinking about it.
I don't know. You don't know how I was thinking about it.
All right. So anyway, yes, we're going to try to explore. Well, we're not going to try. We're actually going to do this. All right. We're going to do this. We're going to take a real person with real imaginary limitations and see if we can break that barrier and take her up to a new temperature, a new level of abundance in her life. So what we're going to do here, this is where we bring in the NVC. Okay? So Julie Cameron definitely has an incredibly powerful program in the Artist's Way. But since David and I are trained in nonviolent communication, those are the skills that we're going to bring to address this real life situation. Take it away, David Steele.
Well, I don't know what the situation is. You've got to tell me more.
All right.
And before you tell me more, I have to do a quick time check. Um, okay. So what's the real life situation?
Okay, so the real life situation is that Yvonne Davis, she had a dream of being self-employed, doing work that came from her heart. And she left her last full-time permanent job working for CBS around February 1st, 2009, 9 years ago. And she's had some incredible experiences. She's been able to meet her needs for the past 9 years, being self-employed, doing what she loves, without a full-time permanent job. But she's always like right at this level where she can't quite feel completely comfortable. It's still a good level to be at, but still every once in a while, you know, like I said, you know, there might be some financial stress, the bill doesn't get paid, there's a late fee, and why does she keep herself at that level? That's her internal temperature, that's her invisible fence, that's her harness. Why does she keep herself there?
So what's the level she would like to be at? Describe it.
What that looks like to me is that, one, all the bills get paid and that the income is larger than the monthly expenses, such that there is also a buffer so that that extra income can be put into savings or investment or retirement, and also have some flexibility for something that might feel like luxury, some traveling. And I have done traveling, so it's not that I haven't done any traveling. It's just that I just, you know, I'm hungry for life, and I recognize that there are limitations in this, you know, linear, time-bound.
Yeah. So get
reality.
back to just describing what
Okay.
kind of happens where the temperature is higher. Where you've been holding your hand on the screen. Put your hand up where you want the temperature to be.
Okay, I want it to be up here, at least.
Okay. All right. And so recap for me what a day in the life is like when the temperature is up here instead of down here.
Okay, so one quick thing I want to say is that I majored in economics at the University of Denver. That's what my degree is actually in. And what's interesting to me is that, and I wanted to give those credentials because I want you to know that I'm not just talking woo-woo economics. This is something that I majored in. I have a 4-year degree. I even went on for a master's degree, and I won an award that was only given to one student a year. I graduated cum laude. I graduated with honors. So this is something that I truly, truly educated myself in. And after all that, I came to the conclusion that on some level, money isn't real. In fact, I'm going to just come out and say it. Money isn't real. And what's real are the things we actually do, the goods and services that we exchange. Those are the things that are real, the resources. And so I concluded that wealth is actually ingenuity, and it's not money. And I would go even further to say it's not necessarily the resources that you are able to control. Wealth is ingenuity, because what you discover is that with enough ingenuity, you can take a very, very limited resource and you can make it infinite. And actually, Buckminster Fuller, who we are both fans of, talked about that. And like David said, you know, he's very underappreciated, but will probably be practically worshipped in the future because he was brilliant. And so basically, what I want to say is that I am troubled by the fact that so many of us think about wealth in terms of money, and that we experience limitation around that, around something that's not even real. And so when I think about what a day in the life of Yvonne Davis would look like, when I'm truly experiencing abundance and wealth and even luxury, is that I actually wouldn't even think about money. It wouldn't be part of my daily existence. I love that money is going electronic, and I think that that's the wave of the future, that more and more this thing we call money, or actually a more accurate term is currency, will be fully electronic, and we will exchange goods and services through an electronic medium. And I do believe that this is the wave of the future. So what I would like to see is that wealth, creativity, ingenuity, imagination, creativity, gifts, heart, passion, energy, all of that is just pouring out of me. I just give it because I want to give it. I don't ask myself, oh, am I going to be able to make enough money? You know, I just don't even want to have to think about that question. I just want to give because my heart, my whole being wants to give what is mine to give. And then to know that my needs will be met. And, you know, although I can't say exactly what that would look like, I do have some idea in my mind of what that would look like. Certainly, my current standard of living, I would be able to meet my current standard of living, and I would say even more comfortable than that. That's what I envision that my life would look like. So those transactions around currency would happen just naturally, you know, just I give and the money comes in and the currency comes in and it goes out and it pays my bill. I don't even have to look at it anymore. It just happens. Does that make sense?
It makes sense. So I have an assignment for you. Those of you who have studied NVC, nonviolent communication, know that when we get to the point of request, they have to be very specific, doable, time-bound. So the assignment is to really, in a tactile way, as if you were writing a description in a novel or in a book, since you're a writer, describe a day with specific detail that is at this higher level.
Okay.
And then we'll work with that.
Okay.
And so we'll make this a two-parter. So between the time I think it's time to bring this video to a close so you can do it.
Okay.
And then we'll come back and we'll work with it. Okay. Because I don't want to make an hour-long video or an hour and a half video. This is a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
And so that's, you know, one of the things there's a lot of power in being specific and pulling things into focus. And so you just actually opened a can of worms. There's probably 3 or 4 videos worth of material in this. Maybe we can make it the core of this whole thing, because other stuff is already cascading through my mind. You can't see it because the mind isn't real. Just kidding. So let's just draw this one to an end and come back after you've done that specificity.
Okay.
All right.
Alrighty, so that's what we're going to do. But I also want to challenge all of you who are watching to do this exercise as well. So David has given me a specific task, which is that I will write down and describe what a day in my life would look like in very concrete sensory detail, from the time I wake up in the morning until I go to bed at night. And if you want to do this too, you can do this in any kind of form. You can write it, you could do a collage, you could paint a picture, you could make
dance.
Yeah, you can make a dance, a song.
Yeah, and there's one other thing when you do an exercise like this, which is things might come up. Like you might hear a voice in your head saying, "Oh, that's not possible," or all of a sudden you might be distracted and go get a cup of tea, and then realize 2 hours later that you were supposed to be working on an exercise. Mm-hmm. So just be aware of that stuff too. Mm-hmm. It's not about changing it; it's about noticing. Mm-hmm. So if you know what comes up,
mm-hmm. Yeah,
and maybe you couldn't even get started on it. Mm-hmm. You know, just notice what's happening that prevents you from getting started. Mm-hmm. So back to the NVC, this is the observational piece, to just be aware of what is happening, so we have a grounded sense that's living outside of that dynamic, as well as the part of us that's in the middle of it participating in it.
Yeah. So yes, be compassionate with yourself, and at the same time, let this be fun. Let this be play. Really enjoy it, because it can be a hugely fun exercise. And you can express it in any form that feels natural to your being. So just play and have fun with this. And we will see you tomorrow. So now that I'm closing this, I just want to ask you to please subscribe if you haven't yet subscribed to this channel, and click like to this video. Ring the bell for notifications. Share on your social media and with your friends and family. And if you have any comments or questions, please put them in the comment boxes below. And we will see you tomorrow. Bye-bye.